It is I, and I'm here once again to speak with you about stuff live from the Middle East, right here in Israel, where today I'll talk to you about the latest update from President Trump in the ongoing ceasefire deal that has been inked by Israel and the Hamas and the United States and many other parties, including Qatar, the UAE, Jordan, Turkey, the EU, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, and on and on and on. So, as you may know, there are still 13 Israeli hostage bodies, in other words, dead hostages in Gaza that Hamas has yet to turn over. They claim that they don't know where all of them are. So, there is a point at which they will say, well, we just can't find anymore. And even Israel may not know the whereabouts of the remaining dead hostages. That number is probably somewhere around 5 or so hostages. We don't know the exact number. It's just a random speculation. But people have speculated that number. People that are in the know. I'm not going to tell you how I know that number because let's just say even the best guesses at this point for where some of those people may be are speculative. So I'm just going to give you the number that a lot of people have been talking about. It's anywhere from roughly 3 to 5 hostages' bodies that may be difficult to locate for the time being. It doesn't mean that they'll be impossible to locate over time. It just means that it may take a longer time to find them, especially while Hamas is still in power effectively in Gaza and still has guns that control about half of the Gaza Strip and refuses to give up the power that they agreed to give up and to leave the scene politically. So, Trump has seen these reports and knows very well that Hamas has been executing Palestinians in Gaza and is getting sick and tired of dealing with this issue. And he has now told, within the last 24 hours, even less, he has now told Hamas, you have 48 hours to hand over all of the remaining bodies that you can possibly hand over. And then you need to lay down your arms and hand over power. There is already an office or a station or a base or whatever you want to call it, surveillance bureau of people from CENTCOM and people from other countries that are signatories to the deal that is based in Israel in the city of Kiryat Gat, which is not very far from Gaza. And so Trump has given the Hamas basically 2 days, 48 hours from yesterday, to hand over all of the remaining dead bodies that they have access to. And if they don't do it, apparently they will face some kind of consequence. Now, hello there, I see you. Thank you for your messages. What those consequences will be largely depend on kind of whatever Trump and Israel, Trump and Bibi decide the consequences will be. It doesn't mean that there will be zero consequences, but it also doesn't mean that Israel is going to go right back into full-blown destroy everything in Gaza mode. They might, but it isn't necessarily clear at this point that that will happen based on this issue. Now, the main objective here remains to get Hamas out of power. And I say the main objective because if Hamas gives up all the bodies somehow, but remains in power, that is a bigger stumbling block to achieving a permanent cessation of violence and a move towards a plan that could eventually one day possibly lead to peace than if Hamas were to just leave power even before every single dead body is turned over, because Israel and other experts might be able to help, but Israel is really, frankly, world class in this. I don't really see why other nations would need to be helping in this, in finding dead bodies. Right? Israel is actually one of the foremost nations that sends out rescue teams to other countries around the world when there are disasters to find the remains of dead bodies and to locate survivors and to help rescue people, etc. So Israel actually doesn't really need technical help in terms of rescuing or recovering dead bodies from rubble or other places where they might be. Nevertheless, there are other people in the area who do have qualifications and certainly could help Israel find some dead bodies if Israel doesn't manage to find them first, which again, it certainly has the skills to find the dead bodies at some point whenever Israel gets access to those areas without hindrance from Hamas shooting at them. So the issue now is really, will Hamas surrender? And as I said from the very beginning of this ceasefire announcement, before it was even signed, while it was still being cooked up, even before the press conference that sort of officialized it, and before it was signed, there is a very low probability that Hamas will willingly give up all of their weapons and depart the scene politically and militarily, because that is their entire purpose. That is their whole raison d'etre. Right? If they actually acknowledge that they have to give up their guns and depart the field, it is basically tantamount to a surrender. And a surrender by Hamas is something they have avoided doing since they were incepted. And yet it is the thing that is most necessary for this process to actually move forward. A surrender by Hamas, by the way, would be the first time in history, in the last 77 years, that the Palestinians would acknowledge an actual surrender of any kind, even if it's just surrendering weapons and departing the field and withdrawing to regain strength to, attack Israel another day. It would be the first time that Arab forces fighting against Israel have actually said, okay, we admit defeat against Israel. We admit that Israel has defeated us. Every other major conflict between Israel and its enemies has always resulted in a ceasefire or a truce or an armistice agreement, which is all effectively the same thing. They are all things that fall short of a military victory on paper, right, as well as in fact, right, because kinetically, obviously, Israel has won this war, but the Arabs have yet to admit it, right? The Arab belligerents in this case, the other Arab nations who signed this deal, obviously, they have said, Hamas, you have nothing to win here, you have lost. Said hi, hello. So Hamas is doing everything that it possibly can to avoid being the first military or terrorist fighting force. They're not a military, but they pretend to be one. But the first fighting force that is fighting a war against Israel to ever have to actually say, okay, we lost and the Jews won and Israel won. Because what that would mean is the endless boastfulness of the Arab nations and the Arab people who are fighting against Israel since before Israel was actually reestablished as a state. It would mean that those very people would be admitting that Israel has won and that the war is now over and we can actually make peace. Because that's what happens after you win a war or lose a war, is you make peace with your enemies, in most cases. In the case of, the thing is, this is of course, this is not a normal situation, because if, God forbid, Israel should lose the war, Israel could not just say, we surrender and then make peace, because that's not the way that an extremely violent group like Hamas wages war and the aftermath of it, right? To them, if you surrender to them, they chop off your head. They don't make peace with the enemies that they've just defeated. Israel, like any normal nation, does and wants to and seeks to make peace, even with its own enemies. Because that's the Israeli way, because that is a normal thing to do. When you have Western values, as in Judeo values, as in Judeo Christian values, these are all the same thing. I mean, similar, yeah, in terms of big topics like war. And we have all evolved in Judeo Christian and Western values. We've evolved past the medieval age. We don't seek to literally chop off the heads of our enemies after we defeat them kinetically. We accept that once they lose, we make peace with them, and we put the fighting behind us, and we stop being aggressive towards each other, and we have peace, and we move forward, and we live together, or side by side, or whatever the distance may be, and we don't seek to annihilate them anymore in a state of war, right? We seek to live in peace and prosperity. That is something that the Arab world has yet to internalize, and is one of the main reasons that this conflict has dragged out for as many decades as it has. Now, of course, there are many Arabs who clearly understand this and would like nothing more than to have peace with Israel because, frankly, they are sick and tired of the fighting. It is stupid to have Israel fighting against all of these countries, especially when these countries keep getting their butts handed to them. And they know that. But you have crazy people, like the people who run Hamas, who are in it to fight to the death. And they don't care if they die, and they don't care about making peace with people that they are fighting for no reason, even though they know they don't have a statistical chance to win. They are a death cult. It's not that they're in it to fight to the death to defend themselves. They are in it to destroy another nation. That is the basis of their identity. That is the entire identity that they have. They do not have an identity of building a nation. They have only the identity of destruction and death. Would that it were that they would have an identity of building a nation, we would be in a much better place. We would be talking about how these countries can grow their economies side by side with each other, instead of talking about a war endlessly. So, and you have to remember also that within Hamas, there are some differences. One principal difference is that there is a military wing, what they call a military wing, which are the terrorists who use violence, who are commanded by their military leaders based in Gaza, but they also have military leaders in the West Bank or Judea and Samaria. And on the other hand, you have the political leadership. The political leadership is the most corrupt part of the organization. They're both corrupt, yeah, the military and the political, but the military ones are more ideologically driven and driven by fighting and death and destruction. The political class is driven almost exclusively by wealth and power. Those kind of motivations, greed, corruption. They are the ones who live usually overseas, outside of Gaza. Yes, there are some people in the military wing that live still in Gaza, like spokespeople, etc. Certain ones at certain levels, not very high usually, especially not now during the war, especially as most of those who were there during the war have been eliminated, and those who have gone out of Gaza during the war by sneaking out, etc. Certainly do not want to return to Gaza, and definitely not now that they have essentially signed off on an agreement that says they will leave the political scene. So the political class has no business being in Gaza, and they know it's not good for their health if they stick around. And besides, they don't have the guns in the political class. Those are controlled by the military wing. And the political class gives the orders of what to do with those guns to the military wing to some degree, but not entirely. And at this point, Israel has destroyed Hamas so much, but it still remains dangerous because they have individual cells that have a lot of weapons and can still do a lot of damage to Israel, shooting rockets, etc. But Israel, has destroyed basically all but around 40 or so, a little bit more. It's considered around 43 cells of the military wing that are still active. But that's, they are not well commanded anymore. The chain of command is very much disrupted. The chaos among the military wing is significant. Like, they don't have a good chain of command in terms of running operations across multiple cells in coordination, etc., like they did 2 years ago. So they have very limited strategic and tactical ability now, even if they have roughly the same number of people in Hamas that they did 2 years ago, because they've obviously recruited people to join Hamas in that time. And one of the ways they recruit people is they promise them more food, more aid, a better life compared to the rest of the people in Gaza, housing, etc. And yes, there's still housing in Gaza. So people have, of course, signed up to Gaza's military wings of Hamas because they want a relatively more comfortable life than they have not being in the military wing in Gaza. And that is how they've managed to maintain their ranks, but their ranks are far more inexperienced. They don't have the command structure that they used to have. They don't have a lot of the infrastructure that they used to have. They don't have literally the commanders that they used to have. They don't have the fighters with the experience that they used to have. They're basically a kind of group of pretty green recruits. Yes, some of them have been fighting now for a couple of years, but most of them have not. Most of them have been training for some period of that time. Not that they have amazing training or anything, but, they train. They still do have some kind of very rudimentary training. Hard to call it basic training because they're not really a proper military, but it's a very basic, if you want to call it that, rudimentary training of how to hold your gun and load it and shoot it and, aim it. Preferably, from their point of view, preferably before you shoot it. From Israel's point of view, preferably the other way around. Let them keep shooting like idiots and missing. So they've lost a lot of their resources. They've lost a lot of their ability. They've lost a lot of their fighting power, effectively. They're a much weaker organization now than they were on October 7th. And that's good. But nevertheless, they still exist, and they still take orders, in large part, from the political class, who has every intent of dragging out the grift as long as they can. And Qatar, despite signing the document that says Hamas should surrender, Qatar keeps paying Hamas. Qatar keeps funding these terrorists. So Qatar is saying, yes, surrender, but by the way, here's more money to keep going, to not surrender. Qatar keeps propagandizing through Al Jazeera, which is the Qatari-owned propaganda network. It's not a news network, it's just propaganda. And I can prove it to you, because if you look at the Al Jazeera newspaper or news website today, I guarantee, I haven't even looked at it today, but I guarantee you that if I do look at it, I can tell you exactly what's on it. At least half of the stories, if not more, and it's usually more, will be about something negative about Israel. They have the entire world to report about, but that will be the top story every single day. Now, that isn't a propaganda network. I don't know what to tell you. It's not as if Al Jazeera should only be reporting on one story if they're actually a truly global news network, the likes of CNN or the BBC or what have you. Right? They should be covering whatever the actual biggest story of the day is. Because yes, even though there's a war happening in Gaza, it's not every single day that is the most important story around the world when there's earthquakes and other disasters and other wars happening and market crashes and market pumps and all these other, big things that affect billions of people around the planet, versus the people that are affected by the war in Gaza directly, which, yes, is a significant number, but not, if you're directly affected by it, it's a relatively small number compared to all the calamities happening around the world, like the war in Nigeria, the war, in Sudan and South Sudan, and fighting there that still, sees many people dead, and fighting in Yemen, and the ongoing fighting in Syria and various places, and and on and on and on. The conflict in Lebanon. There's a lot of different wars that they could focus on. Israel is always the number one thing that they report on, which is a demonstration that they are just a Hamas propaganda network. Because otherwise, they would cover other stories, like as prominently as they cover Israel. And I can tell you that will be their main story tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. And there's only one way that can happen. That can only happen if they are, in fact, a propaganda network. I could not predict to you what their newspaper will be today, tomorrow, the next day, and the day after that, and as far into the future as they will go, unless they actually were a propaganda network, right? So, Qatar continues to fund Hamas. Iran continues to fund Hamas. I know people have said Iran doesn't fund Hamas anymore. That's just not true. But by the way, even if Hamas wasn't funded by Iran or even Qatar anymore, which they are, Hamas still makes an enormous amount of money from UN donations, from EU donations, and from their criminal network. In fact, if they lost all the money that they get from Qatar and Iran, which are the two largest sponsors in the Muslim world, that would still not be even a half or even a third of the money that they get every year in support from outside forces. Imagine being an EU nation and having Hamas literally be listed as a terrorist nation on your list of terrorist nations in the EU, and yet sending them hundreds of millions of euros every year under the guise of, well, we're just helping the people by donating to the civil, administration, etc. So they're still donating massive amounts of money to Hamas, right? So for all these accusations of, Israel did the same thing. Israel sent money to Hamas. Yeah, Israel was also funding civil administration stuff, or not funding, but was allowing Qatar to fund civil administration works in Hamas and in Gaza. But after a while, obviously after Israel saw that it only got backstabbed by Hamas, and it was not a force that they could work with in any way, shape, or form, especially after October 7th, Israel did whatever it could to stop these payments coming in from Qatar, but Qatar continues to this day to send money to Hamas, and they have all kinds of ways to do it. And no, they don't need to bring suitcases full of cash in through tunnels, by the way. They have plenty of cash in Gaza. That's not the problem. And they have electronic wallets in Gaza. So receiving money is not a problem. And they don't need banks in Gaza because, guess what? Their wallets are literally electronic wallets provided by the United Nations. So they can receive fiat currency, and yes, they can receive cryptocurrencies. And no, that doesn't make all cryptos bad. Because if you heard what I said they can receive electronic payments of fiat currencies, and yes, they can receive cryptocurrencies. So they can receive dollars and euros and shekels and pounds and yen and whatever they want right into their electronic wallets that the UN has provided for them. And they can receive cryptos as well. And by the way, not just receive, also send. Yeah, they can spend cryptocurrency from their wallet. So they have a working cash system and a working money system in Gaza, despite not having any real banks, out of Gaza that are actually connected to the global banking networks normally. They're connected through the UN and through their wallets and other means. And yes, they have connections. By the way, there are people in Gaza with dual nationalities who obviously have bank accounts in different countries. And so, yes, Gaza operates transactions in through those banks as well. And that's very easy for them to do. So, Gaza is certainly not a place without the ability to send or receive money, despite the lack of traditional banking system operating in a totally normal way. Right? They have extremely easy. They're not even loopholes. They're just extremely easy paths that are very mildly alternative paths. They're not even unusual. They're literally things you can normally do with any bank if you are, living overseas or whatever, right? So you have a British citizen who lives in Gaza who sends or receives money, to somebody else overseas, and they do it through their British bank account. And Hamas sends them money electronically or gives them cash or whatever it is, and they make the transaction happen. So these are not things that they can't do. So the question now is, will Hamas? Oh, hello there. You guys are the who guys are the richest? Use your own money. Who is the richest in the world? What are you talking about? Who owns U.S. banks? Investors own U.S. banks. You don't understand how that works. They don't want to use their own money. Just lobbying politicians. Who's just lobbying politicians? They want to keep their status while you pay for their overseas dreams. What are you talking about? Oh, free Palpatine? Yeah, free Palpatine. Yeah, from the river to the sea, Israel will be free. Why isn't he advocating for American homeless? American homeless? Sure, American homeless people should have homes. Every knee will bend, okay? Alright? He is just saying all of this so you can support his people. Oh, okay, so you think that Hamas is a wonderful group who doesn't want to kill people in Israel? Got it. This guy wants you taxpayers' money. No, I don't want any taxpayers' money. Israel is not an American territory. Correct, Israel is not an American territory. Vote them out and let Israel deal with its neighbors. I don't know what that means. Israel does deal with its neighbors. Free Palpatine. Free watermelon. You can't let someone who stole your home just be. I don't know what that means. Nobody's stolen any homes around here. If anything, it's not what you think. The Americans have no take in this. I don't know what you mean. I'm in Israel. Just vote them out in your local elections. Yes, Joe, free watermelon. Larry Ellison is your boy? Sure, what does that mean? You support Israel, why can't they just let them be? That's a good question. Well, because the enemies of Israel just want to destroy Israel, they don't actually have an identity. It doesn't matter about this guy and where he is, just another Jewish mouthpiece. Okay, that's nice. Larry Ellison just bought CBS. Wonderful. Who controls American media? People control American media. People who work in companies. Okay. They're not my guests. Greetings from Germany. I don't know what that means. Okay. Typical American with Israeli citizenship. You don't know anything about me or my background. I keep assuming. Doesn't want to show the street where he lives. Who said I'm anywhere near where I live? He's in California. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm in LA, but right. They're only allowed back in the 1970s or so. What is up? Where you at? Those red Spain. Wow, you guys are really busy in here typing, huh? Fascinating. Fascinating. Well, I'm glad that Mizrahim fled Europe. Mizrahim fled Europe. I don't think you even know what Mizrahim are. Mizrahi Jews lived in the Middle East, and they were ethnically cleansed by Arabs, so they were forced to leave, and many of them came to Israel. AT, you have no way of knowing my education. Okay. Those are Mizrahim. You don't know what Mizrahim are, clearly. Jews may have some won in this battle, but they will lose the war. Okay, sure. Good luck with that. Well, how have we been doing for the last 77 years? We will lose the war. Now Hamas has lost the war, and now it's a question of whether or not they will actually live up to the agreement that they made, in which they have agreed to admit their defeat. This guy keeps typing like crazy. Stop enticing Americans to pay for your. I don't know what that means. Israel. By the way, you say Israel shouldn't receive money, or you shouldn't send money to Israel. Do you know that America doesn't actually send money to Israel? What America does is it gives Israel a discount on about $3 billion worth of American products, which Israel buys at a discount, and then it buys even more during the course of the year, for which it pays full price. And then there's an additional $1 billion a year, which Israel is allotted by America to use to buy weapons from Russia and China and other countries for the purpose of reverse engineering those products and giving the intelligence to the United States. So that money never sits like in an Israeli bank and just stays Israeli. It's not a thing. Israel only receives that small allotment of money in a sort of third-party shopping account to literally buy weapons for the United States that the United States cannot buy on its own, because they don't have arms relations with China and Russia and other countries, which Israel is able to buy from, either directly or sometimes clandestinely or what have you. So Israel doesn't actually receive money from the United States, but to be perfectly honest, we are perfectly happy, Israel, to not receive money from the United States. But that comes with a normal condition, which is currently the reason that the United States gives that discounted shopping list and that additional funding to Israel is because Israel is required by the United States to buy American goods. So obviously, if Israel doesn't have that requirement anymore, then it will go and buy goods from other countries if it wants to. And of course, the United States does not want that. So it is in America's interest to keep having that relationship. By the way, Israel has requested on multiple occasions to draw down that number and eventually get it to zero. And Israel doesn't actually need those $3 or $4 billion, because our economy is about $500 billion a year. Like $500 billion a year is the average annual Israeli economy size. So the 3 or 4 billion, yeah, sure, it's real money, but it's around less than 1% of the Israeli economy. So the Israel's economy will do just fine without it, because next year our economy will be bigger than that $3 or $4 billion, right? Because our economy grows more than 1% a year on average. So yeah, that's a trope, but you can keep spreading it if you want. I mean, sure, you're just lying. I voted for Mom. Okay, yeah, you voted for Mom Dookie. A troll like you, I'm not surprised. No, Israel has never lost money for America, or America has never lost money on Israel. Israel makes America a lot of money in R&D, in saving the American military a lot of time and money, in doing intelligence work and research and development work on advanced avionics and other weapon systems. So Israel typically will save America 10 to 15 years on any advanced jet fighter that it develops when they send Israel a version. And Israel then gives the advanced avionics systems to the United States. And that saves the Pentagon literally 10 to 15 years of R&D and cost, which is many billions of dollars per product that they roll out. So yeah, America makes a lot of money in its relationship with Israel. And by the way, Israel makes money too. They sometimes jointly develop projects like the Iron Dome, which, apart from saving lives very effectively, actually is a product that is jointly developed and which makes money for America as well as for Israel. So it is not surprising that these two countries want to keep working with each other when they continue to make money for each other in a very effective way. That's something to keep in mind too. So yeah, Israel doesn't really need that cash. Israel has said, hey, we don't mind if you cut us off, but if you cut us off from this deal we have, obviously you need to let us go back to our ability to buying products from other countries and selling products to other countries, which are things obviously that the United States does not want, because the United States does not want Israel not only buying products from Russia and China, but selling products to them, since obviously Israel is considered to have some of the most advanced technology in the world developed right here in Israel by Israelis. Because, yeah, that's something we do really well. Um, anyway, back to your questions and points. America already, okay. I voted for Mamdouki. I'm not surprised. Yeah, well, if you have Mamdouki there for one term in office, he will be Mr. Slick and he will play the card according to the guitar game. He will be slick. He will effectuate very slow changes, and a lot of people will love him, thinking it's great. Useful idiots like you will probably love it. And then when you have a second term with him, things will get noticeably worse once you notice extremely high costs of your grocery stores or the lack of food on the shelves. And the same thing with the buses not working on time or having breakdowns and not being fixed on time, et cetera, et cetera. There will be a lot of problems when you try to give people basically free food and free transportation and reduce their rent to nothing or control their rent or whatever. You're going to have big problems. Socialism does not lead to wealth. New York is the home of capitalism around the world, and there's a reason why it is the home of capitalism and the capital of capital, if you will, and not the capital of socialism. There's a reason New York has thrived for as long as it has under capitalism, and capitalism is not perfect, and it's not pure capitalism either. It's clearly socialized capitalism, right? Because it's highly regulated, which is good to prevent things like kids working in mines and making doing factory jobs, assembling phones with their tiny little hands. But at the same time, the overregulation of capital has certainly done a lot of harm to the growth of the American capital system. Yeah, you may agree with it or disagree with it. It doesn't really matter. These are just numbers, and you can argue about them all you want, but they are just numbers at the end of the day, and the numbers speak for themselves. And I believe that capitalism is clearly, demonstrably a better system than socialism. But obviously, you disagree if you voted for Mamdouki. Uh, Can you motivate me to study? Yes, study for tomorrow's exam. Do well in your school and do well in school in general. Get good grades so that you can get uh, you can do something after you're done with school that you want to do. Whether that's work for somebody or work for yourself or achieve some other goal that's important to you. I hope you can see Jesus from where you're burning in hell. I don't know what that means. Most people don't understand how geopolitics and money movements work. Yeah, I certainly do. Work shall set you free. That's right. Work is very important. You're from the Philippines. Our government orders some weapons from Israel. Yeah, sure. Israel and the Philippines have very good relations overall compared to many countries. And there are a lot of Filipinos in Israel who work here. And they earn a great living here relative to what they earn back home. And they have a good quality of life here overall. So it's not a surprise to see our relations expanding over the years and not shrinking, right? So we should be very grateful for the relations that we have with friendly nations, especially countries like the Philippines and Israel, that frankly, are neither of which are major powers, right? In the sense of on a global scale, like we're both relatively small countries compared to many other countries around the world that have a lot more power. And Israel and the Philippines should continue, in my opinion, to expand their relationships because that is beneficial for both of those nations, right? And yes, it's obviously beneficial for the Philippines to receive Israeli technology and arms, but it's obviously also very beneficial for Israel to have a friend like the Philippines who can side with it diplomatically, give us support diplomatically, politically, and also do business with us, and also, have tourism and mutual tourism and exchanges of culture, all these other, frankly, really wonderful things that make countries awesome, in my opinion. Better than war stuff, that's for sure, because war sucks, right? If anybody doesn't know that about me, you should know I don't like war. And I'm not a pro-war guy, but sometimes we need to fight to defend yourselves, and it's important to have the ability to do so, especially when you're being fought by people who just want to destroy you, down to every last man, woman, and child, and have said so explicitly and done everything they possibly could to do it. Right? So, you know, that's how I feel about war and defense. Like, it sucks. It's a shitty business to be in. It's a crappy situation to have to deal with. But unfortunately, it is necessary at times. And I really hope that it can end. And I realized it's part of humanity. It's probably going to be a very long time, if ever, that such a thing will happen, that humans will stop fighting with each other. Nevertheless, as John Lennon said, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope one day you'll join us and the world will live as one. Free watermelon. I see you there, Hillary Bible. Listen, bro, I'm all for freeing Palestine. Let me question for you is, who would be the leader of Palestine? Name me a leader. Name me who would be actually the leader. Would you want the Hamas terrorist chief to be the leader? Would you want Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, and its terrorist organizations to be the leader? Who would you actually want to be the leader? Go ahead, name me a name. It is I know some names that you could suggest, but I doubt you do. And if you do, I wonder exactly who that is. You're from Transylvania. Oh, I love Transylvania. Hello, Romania. Kifach. Chifach. How are you? Good to see you. Power, baby. Yeah. Anyway, so greetings to Romania from Israel. I hope you're all doing well. And I hope you're having a great day, everybody. And by all means, like and subscribe and comment and share this video if you want to help me spread the word that I say to people about this stuff. This is a topic I know a lot about because I've been deeply involved in this stuff for many, many, many years. And I've been, posting on YouTube for a while, but I just kind of figured it's about time that more people hear about what I have to say about this because of my, frankly, vast experience in this topic and knowledge. And I am happy to help people learn about this stuff. So if this is important to you, if you care about this topic and you want to learn about it, by all means, like, follow, or subscribe, whatever it's called on YouTube, and share and comment, so that way we can get more people to see these videos. But for now, I thank you all for being here, and hopefully we will see within the next 48 hours. And now it's about 30 something hours, because it was almost 24 hours ago actually that he did it from this point. So it's basically until Monday, let's say Monday afternoon sometime, Eastern Standard Time. I forget exactly what hour it was, but roughly Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Eastern Standard Time, we should see the 48-hour mark pass, and either Hamas will have handed over all the bodies that it actually has ability to get, and there will be some kind of forward progress recognized, and the next step will begin, where they have to transfer power, or something else will happen. So, if you think that's a biased view, I don't have to tell you. That's just how it is. Hopefully, we will see a peaceful resolution to all of this.